Good afternoon, and thanks for joining us. Like I said, we can all sit in a circle if we want to. But my name is Matt Smith, and I'm with Chideo. It's a new and innovative platform that marries celebrities, athletes, digital media, and charitable giving. But today we're here to talk about ad replacement or ad insertion. And this session is going to focus on how programmers and aggregators can monetize TV everywhere deployments. And as more live linear deployment or linear broadcasts and networks are deploying on secondary screens, the need for ad insertion and replacement models is definitely emerging. So we're going to ask questions and hopefully answer them, like what are the functional building blocks required to originate a signal, stream it? How are the ad breaks recognized and marked? And what happens in order to repurpose the broadcast ads for those additional screens? And with the help of these great panelists, we're going to explore the technical workflows, the business requirements and rules, and what you folks might need to know and to gather those elements to help to get a video ad replacement platform up and running. So let's introduce our panelists. First, joining us is David Adams, who is Vice President of Corporate Development with, how do you pronounce that? Aceto. So you tell us a little bit about you and what your company does.
Aceto is a company that's been around since 2004, based out of Stockholm. We build applications for IPTV platforms and connected TV devices. Basically, most of our applications we develop are video applications like HBO Go or NBA.com's League Pass kind of apps. We also build app store solution for IPTV operators and TV manufacturers. So, you know, when you go to the app store, they actually have to have all the back-end provisioning and the reporting and the analytics and the third-party developer community integrated, and we build all that.
Great, thank you. Sean Crawford is here from Adapt.tv. He's Vice President of Business Development. Welcome.
Thank you very much. So Adapt TV is 2007, so a little bit younger than Aceto, based in San Mateo, California, just south of San Francisco, world champions. And we focus on the monetization aspect around video, online video across devices. So working with publishers on the ad insertion, working with them on the pricing of their inventory and getting them connected into buyers, and then as well as working with buyers, helping them get access to the inventory that they want for their brand advertisers. My responsibility is just that, as business development. I've had a few different responsibilities, ranging from operational, setting up our international business in 2010 and 11, and then mobile last year and this year, as well as now business development.
Great. Greg Philpott is the CEO of mDialog. Welcome, Greg.
Thanks, Matt. Thanks for having me. mDialog has been around since 2007, so around the same time. And we provide stream management services for content providers and service providers and CE device manufacturers so that they can manage, measure, monetize their streams on connected devices through linear, live, and on-demand programming.
Great. And Mark London is Vice President of Ad Solutions for the Fox Networks Group. Welcome.
Thanks, Matt. Mark London, Fox Networks Group, right down the street, actually, here. We've Century City gets its name from Fox own all the land here, and they called it Century City from a 20th century studio. Anyways, Fox Networks Group manages and delivers all the entertainment and sports content, linear and digitally. Some of the sites that we work on and deliver for are some of your traditional entertainment sites like Fox.com, Big Fox as we call it as well, American Idol and X Factor, some of the other brands we work in entertainment. And on the sports side, both digital and some of the live environments, not just linear, but also on mini devices that we'll be talking about today, I said.
Great. Yep.
Thank you.
So again, thanks everyone for participating. And let's get started. Let's open a dialogue. And again, as I mentioned in the preamble here, there's more and more TV everywhere deployments out there. We're seeing fine companies like Disney with their ESPN brand and all of their different brands offering live linear solutions. We're seeing the providers, the service providers and the operators having app-driven solutions where you can watch any of the channels you subscribe to. So I want to level set here for the audience and explain to them your thought process as, you know, as vendors, as solution providers, as content owners, the things that you have to think about to deliver this type of scenario. So, let's start very high and paint some broad requirements. What are the a couple of key drivers and things that people have to think about when they're going to repurpose a live linear broadcast signal on another screen? Greg, we'll start with you.
Sure. So we come at it, or we're brought into these scenarios because they want to monetize the stream as well, if not better than that linear stream is being monetized through traditional methods. So one of the things that we're always being brought into is they want to support that carriage agreement identically at a minimum from the split perspective. So you folks that aren't involved in that area, perhaps a linear broadcast is going to be the ad break is going to be divided up. Some ratio between the content provider, so the broadcaster is going to manage it's their inventory, it's their content, and they're monetizing that in part through the TV commercial break, and then the MVPD or the service provider, usually through the carriage agreement, works at ownership of part of that, which certainly Mark could probably speak to better than I. But from what we see on the technology front is finding ways to facilitate or orchestrate that ad break on behalf of these two parties, and a lot of times independent of each other. So making ad routing part of that solution stack is one aspect. And then, of course, the measurement is super key as well, because they want to have better measurement that you can have on an IP-connected device.
Okay. David, additional perspective there?
Well, I think the first thing you need to take a step back and from the big picture, there's like two categories of content we work with. There's premium content, which we all know, we get on our cable channel, and then there's non-premium content, which is everything else. And the great thing about over the top and the internet is you can get whatever you want to see, and you can bring it directly to your TV. And so there's a lot of business models out there that are very complex, especially in the United States, for the premium content. Models don't exist with the non-premium. So second, third tier content, you could just get your content out there and you can start monetizing it right away. But if you are a major broadcaster with premium content, you've got to realize there's rights management, there's just getting all the invoicing together on the content. Is this an authenticated app or not? Carriage agreements go into play. It's really a complex picture out there, and we haven't even started talking about the entitlement and the DRM and things like that. It's really difficult to do all that, and that's why you don't see a lot of it today. But we're getting there, and that's one of the things I'd like to put out there is you'll see some people saying it's so easy, and that's because they're probably a small company with their own content that they own, as opposed to some sort of major broadcasting studio.
So let's step down to Mark then and get that perspective. Mark, when you think about the network at Fox putting something like American Idol out live to where your viewers could watch it on any screen at any time, talk to us about that thought process. Does the over-the-top broadcast mimic the traditional broadcast? Are there requirements where you have to cover up ads, or how do you think of it in terms of an inventory perspective? What are some of those things that you have to think about when you repurpose a live linear channel?
Well, that's a great example. It's also probably one of the more complex ones, given the fact that Fox we also partner with Fremantle in 19 on American Idol. There's global rights, there's North American rights. So the rights discussion is very complex internally. And then when you're out dealing with partners, we recently have put our stuff on YouTube. We have an American Idol channel on YouTube, and just for the North American rights to put our ads on that platform was extremely difficult from a process discussion, technical integration with using their ad server or ours. Those kinds of discussions are complex, and then you get down to the technical delivery and the operational discussions, which then we can really get things that we need to overcome. But the first and foremost is you got to get the business side, and then you really dig into the technical part of it, which a lot of people probably in this room think technically it's probably pretty straightforward, but testing that the various devices now that are out in the marketplace makes it very complicated. So I think X Factor on Roku, a similar situation. What does that look like? Very similar conversations due to the partnership with the Simon Cowell's production company as well as Fremantle. Makes it very interesting, but also keeps a lot of challenges for us, but we tackle them as they come.
So is it fair to say there's a lot of cooks kind of stirring the pot there? That's not just the aggregator?
Yeah. Well, I would say in any big company like ours, in dealing with your partners, there's a lot of, how do I say it, agendas, and a lot of people want certain things. So it's not very easy to get through those conversations. And then when you get to the technical and operational challenges, then it takes a lot of time. It shouldn't, but it does, and that's just unfortunate. That's the reality of premium content. And you have, on one hand, requirements that need to be defined, and on the other one, sometimes you have unproven technology stacks. You really have to have a real strong operational plan, project management to get through those.
Okay. Sean, over to you. I know from interfacing with particular customers that there are some limitations around what ads can and cannot be played on different screens. So can you touch on that, from your customer's perspective as well? I think, so that, to be clear, pharmaceuticals, one that
Right.
has different rights or different usage requirements on the traditional television broadcast versus the over-the-top. So can you touch on some of those nuances there?
Sure. And I want to go back to the Fox thing too, as well as just from an actual serving standpoint. From a company that helped build out, we have an ad server. We helped build out that industry. It is enormously complex, even just for the web. Standards really helped that. So in the web space, it was VAST, and then VAST 2 and VPaid really helped smooth the way for that. It's still much more difficult in the linear space. So I just wanted to add that on.
Sure.
But certainly in terms of what, let's say, buyers want from an advertiser's perspective, they always want access to the best content. They always have different price points in mind, I think, than the sellers have in mind. And so that's part of the challenge. And then getting into, if you're representing a pharmaceutical brand, where that can run, when that can run, how that can run. And that's all based on the rules set up in the system. So the buyer's going to say, this is my product that I'm advertising. And then there's a whole host of sellers inside the platform who have rules around what they will accept and when they will accept that. And it's up then to, first, the technology to make sure that's appropriate, that runs appropriately, and second, a set of eyes on the ground to make sure there isn't a mistake, so that doesn't run. So it's 95% automated, and then 5% a check against that with a set of human eyes to manage that those run in the appropriate place. So if that's going to run across mobile on games, for example, then it shouldn't be running on kids' games, for example. And all that those rules are set up in the system. Our system in particular can handle it. Our competitors can do that as well. And then the seller, for example, inside the system would have a set of business rules about what they will accept and when. And so, like I said, then the technology takes care of that first, and then the set of human eyes double checks it.
Is there anything from a technology perspective or an architecture perspective that we lack as an industry in the digital media space to enable these types of workflows? Or are we learning as we go, and are the tools and the infrastructure enough? Are we doing okay today?
I think from my standpoint as a technology provider, we're doing okay. I mean, I think you could ask anybody, a seller or a buyer, and say, well, no, my ad ran over here when it wasn't supposed to, or no, I wasn't supposed to get that ad because it was competing with someone I had done an exclusive deal with. So certainly there are things like that. It's not perfect. The technology is constantly evolving over time. I would posit that we're doing fairly well in a 5 to 8 year old industry. Yeah. If you take video advertising as that industry, but it can always evolve, and it is always continually getting better. So I would see what Mark would have to say about that. But from our standpoint, I think we're doing well.
Well, the example I'll make, I'll throw it out there for you. Let's say the World Series is on Fox, and you're also offering it on a second screen, and it goes into the 13th inning. Well beyond where it was supposed to be. So if you schedule from one single point of presence, the broadcast, may have a Chia Pet ad or whatever. But if you've got content that's driving huge numbers in terms of ratings, you want to be able to, on the fly, change that schedule so that you don't put the Chia Pet ad there. You run the Coke ad instead. Are we configured to support that on the secondary screen side as well as we are with the broadcast side?
Well, I always have this kind of joke / argument with my friends on the software side is the support versus work, two different things. I think, and part of that is our problem. Again, we maybe not have given enough information and requirements so that our vendors, current or future, can build to that. We tell them these challenges during the kind of courtship phase, like here's some challenges we may face in the future. And Greg's firm has been very patient with us over the years. We've given them like, this may happen. We can support that. And then I go, well, we need to test it. And say, yeah, we have a great way to test it. You can buy our service. So that kind of conversation takes place quite a bit with us. So to answer your question, is the technology this? I think it does to support it. But actual use cases and a lot of hours on those use cases to me, are rare. I don't think we have enough of them.
So it's the actual implementation and getting it into place. We learn as we go.
To a certain degree. And Greg's, they've done the Super Bowl, and there's other people in here who've done other live, very large events.
We definitely learn as we go. As kind of as an industry that are all trying to move this rock up a hill, you need those events. I think Eric Black was on a panel before this saying how you do all the planning, but then it has to happen and you have to learn. But I think the key thing is you do learn and you see where that provisioning worked and this other provisioning we didn't expect that went that way, and then try to get that back into the product. And of course, as solution vendors, you're out there trying to figure out how can I get them to use my enabling technology? And I think we're at a tipping point now, quite frankly, in the industry where you have some of the core components and the premium brands are bringing their linear product online, as when it comes to, in a lot of cases, it's authenticated, but a few big sports and news are doing it unauthenticated, which is great. But we're learning there. The ads get delivered, the content gets monetized, and more people are watching that. I mean, I know what we did with the Super Bowl and Sunday Night Football and the NHL. That an audience kept growing and kept growing, and then in the NBC Sports scenario, then when they did the Olympics, that was definitely a tipping point for those folks. That's for sure.
Okay.
And I'd like to add. Sure. I mean, it's one thing to say, does the technology exist? But the real issue here is it's fragmented. You can't just say from one spot I can cover the entire U.S. over the top and get every screen in the house, or every household in America. You've got all these little islands of capabilities, and because of that, you're going to use this ad network here and my own ad network there or whatever. Mm-hmm. You can't really just get ubiquity across the entire U.S. And then the nightmare on the back end of trying to put it all together and make sense of it and get invoices out to your advertisers. It's really tough right now, and so fragmentation is really the biggest issue out there for over-the-top on television. That we're going to hopefully solve in 2013. I think we're working on a ton of different apps for major media companies in New York today that will hopefully be released in 2013 that'll actually do long-form content with VMAP to get the exact same kind of layout instead of just pre-rolls, but all the way through mid-rolls and whatnot. In a seamless environment and have that all tied into the back end of the billing systems and the rights monetization systems, and they're going to roll that out in 2013. And I think that's when you start to see ad dollars switch from that $80 billion that's just in standard broadcast to digital. And I think that's going to be your biggest indicator that we're finally to a point where, yeah, it is working. When this tiny digital video advertising industry of less than $3 billion grows to be $80 billion overnight, which is what's going to happen, then we know it's working.
Okay. So we've talked about building the platform, delivering, and some of the complexities there, and you've heard that from the panel. So let's talk about measurement. And I'll throw out an example. So let's talk about the content first. A very, very popular show on television today, Modern Family, executive produced by Steve Levitan. He's been very vocal about the fact that he doesn't like that the views for Modern Family on abc.com or wherever they offer that content are measured properly. They're not counted properly because he argues the audience is even larger when you look at the aggregate sum. So in turn, the ads placed against that content come into question as well. How are they measured? Again, similar question as the last go-around. Do we have the right tools in place? Do we have the right organizations like Nielsen who are part of the discussion? Where are we with that, Craig?
Yeah, we have a lot of thoughts and opinions on that. I mean, one of the ironic things is when you go to an IP-delivered content, you have the most accurate measurement you could ever have. You know exactly ad quartile information. It's not a paneled approach. Like Bob Ullman at the MLB is very vocal on that front as well. I have the most accurate information on that front. So it's definitely not a mechanics problem. The C3 and everything it's doing with basically saying that for the live linear and then the next 72 hours or however it is should be all counted, and that makes a lot of sense. And that's kind of combining both the live and a short on-demand window after which you can go into other markets. So it's really more the mechanics. But one of the things that we're seeing with our customers is some of them are following the C3 exactly, or so whatever ad was presented on the linear, on the connected device, is exactly the same ad as what was presented on the actual linear broadcast. And there's some challenges there to do that in a way that you're hitting all your markets from a national, regional, and local perspective. But there's other scenarios that we're in where they're within their carriage agreement, but the digital side of that linear broadcast is saying that's going to go to the highest bidder. So they're not doing like for like, which is interesting, and that's what's kind of really fun and dynamic about the industry right now is that there's no set model that anyone is really prescribing to outside of everyone's working really hard to try to yield optimize their content as best they can.
Mark, thoughts there?
Well, I mean, I think Greg's point is I think before a stream is initiated or any ads are served, you probably have a good idea of what that demo of that user is going to be.
Yeah.
Yet, you may have to wait a day or a few days or longer for Nielsen or Comscore to tell you if that was in the demo. To me, it's kind of going, I don't want to say it's going backwards, but it's definitely not advancing at the same rate as I think the technology is advancing. That's my personal opinion. Operationally, it's a problem because now to optimize your inventory, you now have to cross-reference against another set of data. So if you're delivering 1 million units and one of these firms that you're asked by the agency to use says only 600,000 of those hit your demo, that could be a problem. And if that number is constantly being adjusted, again, that could be a challenge for operationally. Like how can you comfortably build that? Is there going to be disputes? So it's things that are not, like, I think the technology solutions that exist today, I think it's the operational and the business side that may lag there, which is, not the end of the world, but it makes it more difficult.
Okay. So you touched on something, Mark. I'll piggyback on these new devices. Seem to have different features and functionality where we can derive more information about the user itself. I mean, so I want to drill down on specifically like the GPS on a lot of these devices, to where it would seem that you could deliver highly targeted, appropriate ads. Again, the use cases, you're walking next to the Starbucks upstairs and you get a push notification saying save $1 if you go in here right now. Or in the case of this, it would, if you're watching live linear content, you'd get, an ad that would, overlay and present itself. So what are some of the scenarios that we can leverage as an industry and maybe as providers to enable this type of thing? Are we onto something here? Is the platform going to provide for different ad experiences that complement what the broadcast is providing?
Are you saying on second screen or
on second screen?
On second screen.
Yes.
So that's assuming somebody's going to be watching at a Starbucks or something, right?
Or while they're walking down the street, hopefully they don't hit the rental. It'll happen. But no, honestly, I mean, hazards notwithstanding, what kind of scenarios does that enable? Or what are you thinking about from a solution perspective with regard to proximity-based ads on second screen experiences?
Just from our perspective, which is, we're maps for major media companies around the world, not a single one of them is asking for that. They're just trying to get their business model to work on over-the-top connected TVs, and then even the second screens in most cases are not necessarily together and connected. It's a separate unit. They monetize it separately. the advertising industry is a big place, and there's a lot of different ways to sell creative ads. And from the work that we do, it's usually just the video ad side. And when you're in that space, they don't want anything that's interactive on a television. They don't want anything different from what they're already delivering, because what they're already delivering makes them a lot of money. That said, we do a lot of interactive stuff on other platforms, and again, it's never come down to taking into account things like proximity, but it's really difficult to target a user on a mobile device or a TV. It's one of the biggest issues on the web. You've got a cookie, and you can track that person from website to website in an ad network, and they've got great data on who you are. But as soon as you get into a connected TV, that doesn't exist, and it's also very difficult to do on a cell phone. So, I just don't see a big push for that today. Maybe tomorrow.
So we're geeking out on a bit too much. Okay.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. That's what we're here for. Greg?
I'm sure you've got some good
I'll
comments
let you all
on this
speak, trust
from,
me. There's plenty of time.
So a little quick background on what we facilitate the decisioning process through integrations we have with the leading ad decisioning service providers. And every place that our device SDKs exist, and that's all of the iOS stuff, Xbox, Roku, et cetera, we're passing up all of that type of information on behalf of the content provider. So particularly on all of the connected devices, the location, whether it's based off of the IP or if location services have been activated, that's part of the key value pairs that get presented, and they're usually delivered to the decisioning provider via VAST or VPay or things along those lines. So the great news is the information's there. The other great news is the top ADSs out there have that they can easily handle that. They could put together very sophisticated campaigns that are that targeted. I think the scenario is it's just early days. I'm in airports a lot, and I'm reading, and I'm with my iPad all the time. Virgin America seems to have conquest ads every time I'm in an airport, which is really smart from a banner perspective. I think we're probably, we could do that today within interstitial live linear advertising today. I just don't think the demand side is ready for that level of sophistication yet, but I think you're going to see that in a quarter or two.
So maybe crawl, walk, run. We'll get there eventually.
Yeah, I think we're walking now.
Okay. Sean?
So I think the GPS and the coupon at Starbucks, I'll say two things about that. One, I've been in mobile for about 8 years. It's the same example we always give, and it hasn't come to fruition. I think it's, to some extent, it's potentially the holy grail. Google figured out proximity, right? They said, oh, you're making a search for televisions. You clearly want to buy one, so I'm going to put a TV ad next to you, and you're going to click on that ad, and they're a $200, $300 billion company. So they figured out proximity, not in location proximity, but giving you an ad that's related to exactly what you're looking for. The coupon or the geo-local advertising on mobile is the same idea. I'm walking down a street, I'm in a Target, I'm doing whatever I'm doing. I'm going to give you something contextually relevant. I agree. Nobody's asked us for this yet, either on the publisher side or the buyer side. It's a matter of connecting to a database that has GPS mobile data. They exist. You can power that up in your platform. Nobody's asked for it. So I don't know. Maybe we're walking on the technology side. On the business side, I just kind of don't see that happening. And quite frankly, I don't know how many people would opt into that or who would quickly opt out of it if they started getting a bunch of coupons on their phone as they walk down the street. I think there's a use case there. I don't know if it's going to be as widespread as the Google use case.
Maybe we need to talk to the Coffee Bean or Tully's. Maybe it's the
maybe it's the
retail.
Maybe it's the wine bar. Because that on the other hand, I would take.
Yeah.
Anytime afternoon is fine, and that's noon Eastern Standard Time. The other thing about location on the mobile phone is the second screen where you're sitting in front of your television and you're doing something else. We all do it. People are doing it right now. It's great. We're always looking for more information. Something's going to happen on my phone. Something's on my iPad is as interesting as, or more interesting than the commercial, or as interesting as the Super Bowl that I'm watching. But getting an ad to the individual on the mobile phone while they're watching on the first screen assumes a lot of things. It assumes you know who they are. It assumes that they're connected somehow. It assumes that they're on an app that you have access to advertise that is related to the piece of content that's on the screen. And that whole scenario of lining that up is still very difficult to do. If the data comes online, like we were talking about before, that user data, where we understand, we can sort of deduplicate, if you will, that a male, 18 to 35, in the living room is on his phone and his television, he can get an ad to that individual. That's what has to happen. But getting that data across those two devices, that's the same person, is difficult. Right now, you open your mobile phone, you open 4 apps on your iPhone, unless you're on iOS 6, if you're anything older than that, you're 4 people. If you're on iOS 6 or newer, you're the same individual now. But that's been in existence for a month. Before that, you were 4 individuals. There's no way to understand that that was the same person. So that scenario is complex. I think technology probably exists, but it's still very hard to do in a way that makes sense on a business level. So.
Okay. All right, moving on. Softball pitch question, admittedly, but does the quality of the ad matter? And the reason I ask this is that as a technologist, but also as a consumer, I can't tell you how many times I've been watching a piece of content and then see an ad come up and it looks like someone rubbed Vaseline on the screen. So in terms of the... Wow, that sounded really creepy, didn't it?
Yeah. Sure that's a softball question?
Don't go there. Do not go there. All right. Seriously.
Spitball.
We're talking with a group of people here who are either providing the content or incented to help people monetize the content, but doesn't the quality of the ad need to match the quality of the content that bookshelf it on the other side? Mark?
I'll answer that. It's vitally important. It's a mandatory requirement that you have for us, it's premium content. We want our ads, the quality of the advertiser, the quality of the actual video creative has to be from a technology vendor specific to the people in this room. You have to help us deliver that in a very premium way. There's no way for us we would want to work with a vendor that cannot help us deliver that.
Okay.
So, and then the volume is also a key. Either we need to build that or have the vendors community build that. Otherwise it'll be mandated by the FCC or some other governing bodies. So it has to. The loudness, I think there's a commercial, the COM Act they're calling it. So I think it's better that our industry does that before it gets mandated.
Told how to do it.
So Mark, is that something that you'd call out in a statement of work? Is that something you would demand of a service provider or a vendor? It's a must-have to do business with Fox?
I think we've done it already, but I mean, we also field, my team, just by luck, I guess, we field every single request email that's sent to us from the users watching our video wherever it is. Mm-hmm. So we get a lot of complaints about volume of the ads, quality of the ads. And we find a lot about our users, like what they're watching on, what kind of machine, operating browser. So it's very interesting to hear from them. So we take it's very important to us, and we take a lot of pride to make sure that our quality of our video ads matches our premium content.
Okay. Any others?
Yeah. I was visiting with Team One, which is Lexus's agency, and from the brand side, it's vitally important that both the creative, is high quality, but on the technical side, which is very frustrating to them, because when that creative leaves the agency, it might go to a media agency that's doing further sells of it, and it's getting transformed into 1,000 different formats, etc. But back at the agency, they were wondering, that was a beautiful ad that left here. Why is that showing up looking like that? So that is a real problem in the industry that has to get fixed. And then on the other side, agencies don't really understand deeply, adaptive bitrate streaming and network connectivity connection to figure out which of the renditions to present. And a case in point that was a real life issue going on in the industry was that they were paying extra for the pre-roll, but in the earlier days of HLS, when the pre-roll would start up, it would say, well, I think I got a decent connection. I know I have a high-res version, but I'm going to go with a lower one. So inadvertently, adaptive bitrate streaming was undermining the quality of the video ad because it was presenting a low rendition, because it was making a choice. I think the customer probably wants to see some moving pictures and sound rather than quality first, and then I'll grade up. But I mean, these are solvable problems, and there's ways that you can, like through managing a stream and that connection, handle that scenario. But that's a real life situation where they're screaming at at the content side. Why does my pre-roll look bad, but my mid-roll seem to look good? These are those early days again.
Right.
Yeah, it 100% matters. I mean, we just see it, the higher quality creator, the better the performance of the ad unit. And essentially, at the end of the day, the media agency who didn't create the ad but has responsibilities for getting it out in front of folks, to in front of eyeballs. They care about performance, and they care about, unfortunately, click-throughs, but click-throughs and completion rates, and both perform better the higher quality the ad.
So is it imperative on all of us as part of this equation to push on the agencies? Is it an agency problem where they're not understanding that the quality's got to persist for the over-the-top piece too? It sounds like that might be a piece of it.
I mean, it's a piece of, they're the ones writing the check. So, I mean, technology providers and vendors and everyone has to kind of step up to make sure that that ad gets presented. They're expecting, if linear is going to really be on all the different glasses in our lives, everyone's expecting it to be like TV. So a spinning wheel, for example, as you're doing, if it's a player switching strategy to get that ad up there, no one is expecting to see a spinning wheel anymore, and certainly not if they're watching linear, and then even more so if they're watching it off of their Xbox or their Roku. I mean, because that is on the big glass in the living room. So I think it's incumbent on all the, everyone in the industry to deliver the TV commercial break exactly as the general consumer's used to.
Okay. So let's talk about CPMs, what we're making off of this content. One of the biggest knocks on the OTT side of the industry today is that there just aren't as many eyeballs, you see Mark Cuban's rants, to view the content, that it's a totally different universe in the broadcast space versus the over-the-top space. So in turn, you'd say that there are fewer eyeballs to watch the ads. And Jeff Zucker, the former CEO of NBC Universal, said years ago that we're sacrificing digital dollars for digital pennies. I think those have become dimes. But still, what are the variables at play when we talk about CPMs from the broadcast realm into the second and third screen realm? Obviously, there are differences there, but how are your customers thinking about this? Mark, how are you, as an aggregator, creator of this content and distributor, how do you look at CPMs on your primary versus the secondary screens?
Well, I think you got to get to 1,000 views, right, to get a CPM?
Yes.
Sorry for that.
Ooh, ouch.
No, for us, it's, again, we dig the premium content view is the fact that most of the premium shows that would be on one of those devices would have sponsors, and we would offer that out to our sponsors. They would have, either by contractually or by courtesy, we would make sure that our sponsors had access at audience, which we think is a premium audience. If they're taking the time to invest to buy those devices to watch their content, that's the advertisers. That's the market the advertisers want. So we can, to me, it's a way to maintain the CPMs that we're getting linear and or digital.
So am I miscategorizing if I say value add? Is it something that helps a deal with someone like Pepsi for the X Factor?
No, I don't think it's a value add. I think it's mandatory that they have it. And I think our salespeople have the same attitude. I mean, they have to be there. They don't want to miss out on the opportunity of where we feel that is a valuable set of their audiences also watching it. And in the second screen world, I think they're watching on air, they're watching on their iPad, they're watching on their mobile. I mean, that's the ones they want, so you have to be there. And that's the attitude that we have. And again, it's premium content. If the consumer is watching on that device, we feel that that's also a premium audience. It should be the same experience. So we're not trying to say, oh, it's a value add or it's a subset. I mean, it's that. To me, it's the same person as well a lot of times.
Yeah.
Just it could be a combined experience.
Well, I mean, look at all the products. I mean, all of us and everyone in this room must have multiple products, whether it's iOS or Android. They're going to watch what they want to watch on wherever they're at. So why wouldn't you, as a premium brand advertiser, want to be there? Or why would you want to offer it up to your competitor or someone else in that category that is not a premium? They're getting your guy for free. And that's my opinion.
Sean, any thoughts there?
Yeah, I think I don't think there are any less viewers. I mean, there's more people, more devices, and more content. The question is around fragmentation, number one. So it's harder to get to 80% of the audience. You have to hit a larger swath of devices and apps and et cetera to get to that same audience as before. And then to the CPM point, I think the CPM, yes, is a cost per thousand. I don't know why M is thousand, but it is.
French.
Yeah, milliard or whatever, right? Cost per milliard, cost per million. So a little bilingual there from the panel here today. But but it's an infinitely measurable 1,000 views, and I think so we know that it's 1,000. I mean, everyone in the industry knows it was 1,000 folks that watched it, and that pays whatever it pays. And it is currently less expensive than, say, broadcast premium content on linear TV. Let's say mobile is more expensive than the web. So it's sort of like web, mobile, and then television. It's sort of in that order. Over the top is kind of all over the map in terms of the pricing. If you take over the top being like smart televisions and those types of devices in your living room that aren't your cable or your satellite, they're all over the map on the pricing. So I think a lot of it is still figuring out, A, what's the proper price point. There's a big gap in the bid and the ask sometimes on the OTT space right now. And then it goes back to measurement. Am I hitting the right audience? Because if so, that has a different, can I guarantee I'm hitting the right audience? Because if I can, then that has a different price point than best guess at hitting the right audience, that I hit 60% of the audience, but the other guy says 70 and you guaranteed 100%. Like, if it's all over the map like that, that has a big impact on pricing.
And I'd like to add to that.
Please.
There is this experience you get on TV that you can't get on another device, and that's important for brands. And while it's the same user and it's the same premium content on these other devices, and so you can say, hey, we're targeting the same person, you don't get the same experience of that wonderfully made, expensive ad that they built for Coke or for whoever. And so if you can get to that point where you can get ubiquity on connected TVs and you can get the entire U.S. Population, and you can measure it, which you can't really well on broadcast. So you get the advantages of the digital with the experience of on the TV, then you can actually charge higher. And so that's really the sort of holy grail when we get those things to actually work together and we get across the entire U.S. Many of the ad networks I'm talking with and working with on a regular basis are saying, we want to get there so we can charge a lot more.
Anyone else?
Sure. One of the we do a lot with live sports and news as our customers, and one of the things that we see them doing is really going across as many devices. So how do you get to that at least that 1,000? One of the strategies that we definitely see working is they're on the iPad, and then they're on the iPhone, and then they're on Roku, and then they're on Xbox. So they're hitting all the different screen sizes, but they're also hitting the different demos that have those devices. And actually, they are growing their audience by device reach quite effectively. So that's number one. And then number two, which is an interesting dynamic, is that we've definitely seen is from how do they get a nice high CPM, but back to the data points that we actually have to work with. A real basic one works really well for them, and that is they know the device they're watching on. And we've seen conquest ads. So where it's an Android phone and they're targeting the iOS devices. So if you're watching that programming on the iOS device, you're going to get hit heavy with the Samsung ad, and that's definitely sold at a very high premium. And then they're also, like, to tie it up, they're getting a lot of measurement of where that ad was watched, on what device, and in what market. Because that's all there for them today.
Great. Well, if anyone has any questions, we have a couple minutes. We've got a question here. Microphone or 1 second? Just 1 second for the mic. Make sure we catch it for the archive.
I have a question more as a consumer. When I watch over-the-top video, I noticed that unfortunately the selection of ads that they show is still very limited. For example, I can watch The Daily Show, and every day I would see the same ads. Sometimes I can see the same ad, just twice in a row. Is that because it's just limited selection, or the algorithms are not sophisticated, or the advertisers just think that when they show the same commercial 5 times in one show, it gives them better result? I think it actually would make things worse for them.
So it's generally a question of the available creatives or the available advertisement for that particular slot. So they're all targeted, like we were talking about earlier. They're looking for a specific demographic on a specific device, perhaps, or a specific day part, time of day. And then just inside from a digital perspective in the digital video business, buying across a mobile device or a tablet device or an over-the-top is newer than buying video on a web page, which of course is newer than buying video ads or TV ads. And so it is still something that's relatively new, number one. Number two, targeting is still a little bit more complex and not as simple. There aren't as many third-party providers doing it. There isn't as much data as we talked about earlier with cookies, et cetera. So those are some of the reasons why you're going to get redundant ads. And they also don't want to show dead air. Don't want to show a blank spot either, because that's a perishable slot.
The top ADSs out there definitely have sophisticated algorithms to do that, but it's a little bit of a supply-demand challenge more than anything. It's certainly whether it's DFP or Freewheel or Auditude or your firm that they can handle it.
Well, some publishers just may not have the creative for that particular device. They may only have one of their 20 advertisers will have a piece of creative that'll work. Now, or they're oversold, and that advertiser just needs to catch up.
To clear it out, yeah.
There's different scenarios. Some may be technical related, but mostly or a mix of business. I don't know that.
They have to make good on all the Chia Pet ads they missed.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
Anyone else? Great. Well, join me in thanking these panelists. Hope it's been a very valuable discussion. Thanks for coming.